Welcome to Golden Gate Stories, where the most dramatic, surprising, and inspiring stories of Black CEOs come to life. In today's series, The Black CEO Who Outsmarted Wall Street with Just One Unexpected Question, you'll step into the journey of a young Black CEO who seemed cornered in the ruthless undercurrents of Wall Street, where money, power, and manipulation collide. But with just one single question, he left the most powerful tycoons speechless, flipped the entire game, and carved out a victory that will make you cheer. The story unfolds across 8 chapters with 4 parts each, blending suspense, sharp psychology, humor, and heartfelt emotion. It's a ride that will take you from curiosity and shock to satisfaction and inspiration. This is not just a business story, it's a journey of breaking stereotypes, proving that courage and intelligence can rewrite the rules of the game, and to make sure you don't miss the next episodes or other thrilling stories of CEOs, love, betrayal, success, and shocking twists. Don't forget to hit subscribe to Golden Gate Stories right now. Trust me, you won't just be entertained, you'll find inspiration for your own life. A crisp autumn morning in New York. The sky was gray, the cold wind rushed along the skyscrapers of Manhattan. People hurried in tailored suits, clutching hot coffee cups, eyes glued to their phones. Everyone moved toward one direction, Wall Street, where numbers on a screen could turn someone into a billionaire or strip them bare in an instant. Inside a glass-walled room at the heart of finance, a meeting was underway. Not just any meeting, but a shark pit, a brutal negotiation where there are only 2 outcomes. Either you convince the financial sharks to pour money into your company, or you get torn apart by questions so sharp even razors would be jealous. And our protagonist, a young Black CEO, stood there. His suit wasn't custom-made in Italy, just a well-fitted one, neat but not flashy. His eyes were calm yet determined, unlike others who usually trembled in this very situation. He knew this was more than fundraising. It was a battle against prejudice, because in the world of Wall Street, dominated by familiar white male faces, the thought of a black man leading a groundbreaking tech company sounded almost like a fairy tale. A gray-haired investor crossed his legs, voice dripping with sarcasm. "What makes you think you can compete with giants who've dominated this market for decades? Artificial intelligence? Blockchain? Or just a flashy name to make us throw money at you?" The room chuckled, a laugh laced with arrogance and disdain. But the CEO didn't rush to answer. He sipped water, set the glass down, and looked straight at them. In his mind, years of running into barriers, being denied bank loans because of his credit score, a U.S. system rating your ability to repay debts, or investors turning their backs after just a 30-second glance at his profile, had all turned into strength. He recalled an unspoken rule. In these negotiations, the one who asks the final question controls the game, and he knew he would have to drop that question, the one that would silence Wall Street. But first he smiled, a smile both confident and provocatively teasing. "There's something fascinating I learned while studying the stock market. A volatility, price fluctuation, is often seen as a threat. But if you know how to harness it, it becomes an opportunity. Just like today, you see me as a risk, but I see that very skepticism as my advantage." The room froze for a second. No one expected him to open with such a psychological counter-strike, and this was just the warm-up. He hadn't unleashed the unexpected question yet. But at this moment, Wall Street had already begun to take notice of the man they once dismissed. The atmosphere in the glass room grew heavier. After that reply, those who thought they could easily crush the young Black CEO were now raising their eyebrows. Some tapped pens, others pretended to take notes, but the feeling was mutual. This guy is not simple. Another investor, well known in the investment banking world, leaned forward, dropped a thick folder on the table, and spoke coldly. "You talk about opportunity. Then tell us, how will your company survive in a bear market?" The phrase, bear market, made the room nod knowingly. It means a market in decline, stock prices falling consistently, pessimism spreading like wildfire. In such times, hundreds of once promising companies vanish within months. The CEO smiled, as if he had been waiting for this very question. "You know," he said slowly, "people panic when they hear bear market. But in tech, especially. For startups, that's the phase that separates dreamers from survivors. We're not just surviving, we already have a plan to grow even when the tide is against us." He pulled up a slide showing user growth over the past 12 months. The numbers weren't massive, but they were steadily climbing, even while the overall market tanked. "Some companies build their entire business on investor cash," he added with a hint of sarcasm, "like kids living off their parents' allowance. But us? Our product has been feeding itself from the very start." A dry rang from the end of the table. The gray-haired investor leaned in, eyes gleaming. "So, without more funding, you think you can scale? Do you even know what scalability means?" Scalability, a word that haunts every startup founder. It refers to the ability to expand without collapsing under skyrocketing costs. The CEO chuckled softly. "Of course. Scalability is like a bridge. Build it from bamboo, and a few trucks will snap it. Build it from steel, and thousands can cross. Safely. We've built ours from steel, and to prove it, I have the numbers." He pointed at a chart showing customer acquisition costs dropping steadily over time. Numbers don't lie. The room fell silent again. But this silence was different, not disdainful but wary. They realized the man before them wasn't just another startup, pitch lost in the noise. He was someone who understood the game and was ready to flip the table. The glass-walled room now felt like a tightened violin string, ready to snap. Her pen-tapping stopped, replaced by sharp glares and furrowed brows. They were starting to realize this wasn't easy prey. A young investor, hailed as one of Wall Street's rising stars, suddenly fired off a sharp question. "You talk about steel bridges, but the tech market changes daily. How do you plan to protect your company against disruptors?" Disruptor, a buzzword in the startup world. It refers to small companies with innovative models strong enough to break and reshape entire industries. Uber was a disruptor to taxis. Netflix disrupted the film industry. And everyone fears being the next to be disrupted. All eyes turned to the CEO. This was the kind of question that made many founders stutter. After all, disruptors were their biggest nightmare. But instead of trembling, he laughed, a soft, almost mocking laugh. "You talk about disruptors," he said slowly, "but have you ever asked yourselves why they exist? Because the giants fall asleep. We're different. We are the disruptor." He clicked to the next slide, his company's tech product, an AI platform that optimized financial trading in real time. He explained, "Instead of relying on outdated models to predict markets, we use machine learning, systems that teach themselves from data and improve daily. You know, over 70% of Wall Street trades today happen through high-frequency trading, algorithms, buying and selling stocks in fractions of a second, faster than a blink. And we're not following this trend. We're leading it." Some investors frowned, others tilted their heads, curiosity gleaming in their eyes. The CEO paused, scanning the room, then lowered his voice, heavy with weight. "You call us a risk. But if one day our technology becomes the very foundation you rely on to trade, then tell me, who is the risk to whom?" The words landed like a bomb. The air thickened. No more mocking laughter. Only silence, and a sharp realization that the balance of power in the room had just shifted. The atmosphere in the room had completely shifted. The sharks who once lounged with arrogance now leaned forward, their posture tense. Some exchanged wary glances, as if asking, "Did we just lose control of this meeting?" The black CEO took a deep breath and tapped his fingers lightly on the table. "You've spoken a lot about risks, markets, and numbers, but there's something I've always wondered." He paused. Silence. Only the tick of the clock echoed. All eyes locked on him. For decades, Wall Street has poured trillions into giants, many of which collapsed spectacularly. Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Enron. You call those failures, I call them lessons. So my question is this: if you're as smart as you claim, why do you keep betting wrong? The words sliced through the room like a blade. A few jaws dropped, some clenched, their coffee cups tight. No one expected a young CEO to strike back so directly with such a piercing question. He leaned forward, his voice calm yet edged with irony. You're asking me whether my company is scalable, whether it can survive a bear market, whether it can fend off disruptors, but let's be honest. It's Wall Street that has failed the world's trust time and time again. So tell me, who really needs to prove themselves here? Me or you? A deadly silence spread. This was no longer a simple pitch meeting. This was a battle of power, and the young black CEO, once dismissed, had flipped the board with just one question. Everyone in that room understood. The game had changed, and from that moment on, Wall Street would never see him as the underdog again. News of that closed-door meeting was never made public, but as with everything on Wall Street, nothing ever stays a true secret. Within days, whispers spread through the hallways of investment banks, inside upscale bars where financiers gathered, and even on Twitter, where every rumor could turn into a trend. They say a black CEO actually asked Wall Street, "If you're so smart, why do you keep betting wrong?" Whirl. The line spread like wildfire. Some laughed it off. Arrogant. He'll get crushed sooner or later. Others felt intrigued. Who would dare say that in the shark pit? And more importantly, if he dared to say it, maybe he has something real. Meanwhile, in a small midtown cafe, the CEO sat alone with his laptop. No champagne, no celebration, just a glowing screen filled with numbers. He knew one bold question could cause a stir, but to survive, he had to back it with results. He recalled an unspoken Wall Street rule. They don't care who you are, they care about the numbers you deliver. And that was the weapon he was preparing. Sipping his coffee, he opened the company's dashboard. Streams of data danced, his AI system analyzing millions of trades in real time. Green lights blinked, charts ticked upward. He smiled softly. Let's see, he thought, how long they'll keep laughing. Because he knew the real battle with Wall Street had only just begun. A week later, the CEO's name began appearing in the financial press. At first, just a few lines in small columns. A startup stirs buzz at Wall Street pitch meeting, but soon it climbed onto the front pages of major outlets. Financial Times ran a headline dripping with sarcasm: "A black CEO leaves Wall Street speechless, but is there substance beyond the words?" Meanwhile, Bloomberg published a lengthy piece framing the meeting as a rare phenomenon. The surprising confidence of a small startup may signal that Wall Street is underestimating fresh faces. On Twitter, debates flared up like wildfire. Supporters cheered. Finally, someone had the guts to call out the sharks to their faces. Critics sneered. Bet he's bankrupt next week. Talking big is easy. Surviving isn't. The CEO read it all. Every word felt like both pressure and fuel. He knew the media was a double-edged sword. Today it could lift him up. Tomorrow it could bury him deep. Yet instead of worrying, he chuckled softly. He understood one truth: all attention is an asset. Praise or criticism, it didn't matter. As long as people were saying his name, it meant he had entered the big game. In his notebook he wrote, Stage 1, get attention. Stage 2, prove with numbers. Stage 3, ask the question they cannot refuse. He knew that meeting had only been the prologue. The real battle lay ahead, where numbers and strategy would decide whether he became a rising star or just another shooting star fading into darkness. If the press fueled curiosity, the investor class wasn't nearly as amused. Behind closed doors where no cameras or microphones reached, whispers of backroom politics began. This kid is dangerous. If he grows bigger, it'll be trouble. Agreed. That arrogance doesn't fit Wall Street. We need to control the narrative before it gets out of hand. Some funds quietly reached out to his competitors, promising capital just to push rival products into the market faster, an old Wall Street trick. If you can't buy it, destroy it. Meanwhile, even those who appeared supportive weren't entirely sincere. A few investors suggested partnerships, but with conditions attached. You'll need a more experienced leadership team, preferably white, just to reassure the market. That suggestion landed like a knife, disguised as advice. It reminded him that no matter how capable he was, the color of his skin was still lurking in the room, waiting for a chance to strike. In his small office, the CEO looked out at the glittering towers. Beneath them lay a world driven by money and power. He sipped his black coffee and smirked. "You think I'll fold under pressure? You're wrong." He knew survival meant more than proving his product. It meant proving his resolve. And sometimes resolve itself was the sharpest weapon against a dirty game. In chess, there's an unshakable rule. When your opponent thinks they've cornered you, that may be the very moment you're setting up your counterattack. The CEO knew this better than anyone. After the phone calls, the veiled suggestions, and the spreading rumors, he chose not to react immediately. Instead, he went silent. Silent to observe. Silent to prepare. Late at night, his small office glowed with light. A whiteboard covered in scribbles, arrows, and numbers. He was building a 3-layer counter-strategy. Fortify user trust. Because in tech, customers are the strongest fortress. He released a new update for his AI product, giving small individual traders access to tools once reserved for massive funds. A bold, clever move. Win the people, and Wall Street can't ignore you. Forge unexpected alliances. Instead of depending on the Manhattan giants, he reached out to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, where the spirit of break the rules thrived. There, he knew, were investors unafraid to bet on the underestimated. Prepare the next question, because he understood. In this game, the right question at the right time could be deadlier than any answer, and he would need another bomb to make Wall Street hesitate again. He stood by the window, looking out at the city that never slept. Neon lights flickered. He smiled to himself. "You want to play dirty? Fine. I'll turn your arrogance into my weapon." That night, in his small office, a plan quietly took shape, not just to defend, but to attack. Monday morning, Wall Street opened with its usual mix of anxiety, excitement, and greed. But that day, an unexpected announcement flashed across financial and tech news feeds. The Black CEO's startup had officially launched its AI update for small retail investors. It was like a bomb dropped on the market. Until now, advanced trading tools, especially real-time AI analytics, had been the exclusive privilege of multi-billion-dollar funds. Small-time investors, who usually relied on gut instinct and rumors, suddenly held weapons comparable to the sharks. Online finance forums exploded. "Unbelievable! I finally have the same tools as the big funds. If this works, it's like giving ordinary folks rocket launchers to fight tanks." Even skeptical reporters were startled. A CNBC article remarked, "This move could be a game changer. For the first time, the gap between retail investors and Wall Street narrows significantly." In his small office, the CEO quietly watched the reaction unfold on his screen. New sign-ups skyrocketed. Within hours, the system flashed, "Server overload." But instead of panicking, he laughed softly. "Exactly. Let the users speak for me. Let the market prove me right." He knew Wall Street would not be pleased, because he had just committed the ultimate sin, empowering the very people the system had always intended to keep powerless. Wall Street never sits quietly when its interests are threatened, and the CEO's move was like poking a hornet's nest. That same week, a flood of analysis articles appeared in major newspapers. New AI tech, revolution or scam? Do retail investors really need such complex tools? Hidden dangers. Could small players burn themselves with AI? The headlines looked objective, but everyone knew they were crafted to seed doubt. On TV, financial experts nodded, sagely, warning, this tool could be dangerous for people who don't understand the market. Meanwhile, his competitors rushed to launch similar products, unfinished, inferior, but enough to muddy the waters and divert attention. The pressure mounted on his young company. Shareholders grew nervous. Engineers worked through the night to keep servers from crashing under the surge of users. Online, some cheered, but many began to waver under the drumbeat of expert warnings. In his office, the CEO stared at screens filled with headlines and tweets. For a moment, he recalled an old saying, "When you're attacked from all sides, it means you're heading in the right direction." He smiled, jotting in his notebook, "Their campaign is fear. My campaign will be trust." And the very next day, he prepared his second counterattack. This time, not just with technology, but with a story. The next day, instead of staying silent and letting negative headlines dominate, the CEO made an unexpected move. A direct, unpolished media campaign. He appeared in a short video posted on YouTube and LinkedIn. No fancy studio, no glossy backdrop. Just him, in a plain shirt, sitting in front of his laptop. "Some say our technology is dangerous," he began, his voice calm yet firm. "Dangerous how? Because it gives power to the very people who've always been left behind?" He told a story about his father, a night shift worker who lost all his savings after following a bad investment tip. If he had the kind of tool we're building today, he paused, eyes glistening, things might have been different. The video was short, just 4 minutes, but it spread like wildfire. Viewers didn't just see a CEO, they saw a human being with a real story, real pain, and most importantly, they saw why this technology mattered. On Twitter, the hashtag #JewJewWallStreet for everyone began trending. Small investors shared the video with comments like, "Finally, someone built tools for us, not just for the sharks." Media experts called it a soft knockout punch, not delivered through dry numbers, but through emotion and trust. In his office, the CEO watched app downloads double in just 48 hours. He knew he had just turned Wall Street's attack into a springboard to climb higher. As the hashtag "should in Wall Street" for everyone spread across social media, Wall Street's response was no longer subtle. They struck back, hard. Within a week, his company faced a barrage of investigations. The SEC sent letters demanding records and independent audits. Partner banks suddenly delayed transactions. Partnership talks that were nearly finalized went silent without explanation. In the press, coordinated hit pieces emerged. Inexperienced CEO, can he handle risk? AI isn't a magic wand. The dangers of tech delusion. Even financial talk shows joined the pile-on. One host smirked on live TV. "This startup claims it can help small investors beat Wall Street. Sounds more like a Hollywood movie than real business." Inside the company, pressure mounted. His young team, many facing the harsh side of financial warfare for the first time, wavered. Some raged. "They're playing dirty." But others feared, "If the SEC clamps down, we could die young." The CEO gathered everyone in their small conference room. No flashy slides, no grand speeches, just steady eyes and a firm voice. "They want us to be afraid. But remember, if they care enough to attack us this hard, it means we've grown big enough to be a threat. And if we keep standing, their fear becomes our advantage." Silence filled the room. Then heads began to nod. Determined smiles spread. They realized this was no longer just a job. This was a fight for existence. And as the clock struck midnight, the CEO sat alone, scribbling in his notebook. Chapter 4. The Real Counterattack. On the first day of the new week, as the markets opened, the media was stunned. The CEO's startup, rather than staying silent, launched a public live stream that drew tens of thousands of viewers. No luxury venue, no billion-dollar LED screens. Just a small room, a whiteboard, and the CEO standing in front of a camera with a marker in hand. "Hello, everyone," he began, smiling confidently. "Over the past few weeks, I've heard it all. from scam to dangerous. Today, I want to talk to you directly, not through the lens of the press, not through so-called experts. He started sketching on the board, user growth charts, quarterly costs trending downward, 3 consecutive months of positive profit. Every number was clear, transparent. No glitter, no hiding. Then his tone shifted, calm but sharp. Wall Street says our technology will put small investors at risk. But what's the truth? For decades, they created risk with tools ordinary people never had access to. We're not creating risk. We're giving people the chance to understand and control it themselves. The live stream chat exploded. First time I've seen a CEO speak this bluntly. Exactly. The sharks are just afraid of losing control. Viewership surged past 200,000 in under an hour. On Twitter, the hashtag #TrustTheNumbers appeared, alongside clips ripped from the live stream. In that moment, the CEO knew this wasn't just a counterattack. This was a declaration. He had forced Wall Street into the one position it hated most, answering to the public. Within a single night, the CEO's live stream became the hottest topic across media and online forums. Ordinary users cheered, but the financial establishment didn't sit idle. The very next day, a wave of op-eds appeared. Young CEO, Wall Street's new populist? Do pretty numbers hide a harsh reality? On TV, a silver-haired expert, a regular on CNBC, shrugged dismissively. He's just playing emotional PR tricks. But in the end, markets don't run on hashtags. The attacks escalated. Anonymous sources leaked to the press that the CEO's startup was facing liquidity issues. Liquidity means a company's ability to have enough cash to meet short-term obligations. A rumor like that could spook retail investors into panic. Inside the company, nerves frayed. One employee exclaimed, "If people believe this rumor, we're done." The CEO listened quietly. Then he smiled, a patient, steady smile. They're weaponizing fear, but remember, rumors take time to spread. The truth only needs one piece of evidence to flip the narrative. He pointed at the screen showing the balance sheet. Enough cash reserves to keep the company running for 18 months without new funding. Tomorrow, he said, we'll publish this data. Not in words, but in a transparent report. Then let's see what Wall Street has left to say. The next morning, as Wall Street opened, the CEO's company released an unprecedentedly transparent financial report. Not a vague summary, not polished numbers, an open, detailed data set, quarterly revenues, customer retention rates, current cash reserves, even monthly operating costs. The report was posted publicly on the company's website with a short note. The truth needs no cover. Journalists and analysts rushed to read it and were stunned. The numbers showed user growth up 35% per quarter, customer acquisition cost down 20% year over year. Enough cash reserves to operate independently for the next 18 months. A Reuters reporter tweeted, "We've checked. Figures align with market data. No sign of liquidity problems at this startup." The online community erupted. The hashtag #TrustTheNumbers shot to Twitter's #1 trend within hours. Retail investors flooded timelines. Finally, a company that shows us everything. No secrets, no spin. Meanwhile, on Wall Street, faces grew grim. Their fear campaign had been shattered by nothing more than transparency. One analyst exclaimed live on air, "This is unprecedented. They're breaking the rules of the game with honesty." In his office, the CEO watched the headlines roll in. His team cheered, hugging each other in triumph. He smiled quietly, whispering, "This is just the beginning. The war is far from over, but now they know we won't scare so easily." The company's transparent report shook the market. But while the public cheered, in a Manhattan skyscraper, the real power players began to move. One of the largest financial empires, Harrington Capital, suddenly issued a press release. "We welcome innovation, but warn that Startup X's technology could pose serious systemic risk if left unchecked." The phrase systemic risk is no joke. It implies the potential to destabilize the entire financial system, something regulators, Congress, and even the White House cannot ignore. Media outlets exploded. Headlines screamed, Could a tiny AI disruptor shake the global market? Innovation or threat? Young CEO's startup faces systemic risk allegations. Inside the small office, his team panicked. A young engineer exclaimed, "They don't just want to beat us, they want to bury us with the law." The CEO stayed silent for a long moment. Outside the window, Manhattan's lights glimmered like thousands of watchful eyes. Then he rose, his voice firm. "Harrington Capital has stepped out of the shadows. That means they fear us enough to wield political power. Fine. The next board won't be played in meeting rooms. It'll be played in the halls of Congress." He opened his notebook and wrote one line. Chapter 5. When the Game Leaves Wall Street. On a freezing winter morning in Washington, D.C., the CEO stepped onto the marble steps of the Capitol building, home of the U.S. Congress. Unlike the buzzing chaos of Wall Street, here the atmosphere was solemn, heavy, and steeped in symbolism. The headlines had already spread. AI startup CEO summoned to testify on systemic risk. That single word, testify, hearing, was enough to make his entire company tremble. A hearing meant his technology was no longer just a business matter. It had become a national political issue. He entered the grand hall where seasoned lawmakers sat waiting. TV cameras aimed straight at him. A reporter whispered to a colleague, "If he stumbles even once, his company's stock could tank instantly." Meanwhile, Harrington Capital had deployed an army of lawyers and experts as opposing witnesses. They came armed with charts, binders, and a carefully scripted speech designed to brand his technology as a threat to national financial stability. As the hearing began, a silver-haired congressman asked, "Do you realize that your company's technology, if widely adopted, could trigger severe volatility in the markets? We need to know who will be accountable if your system fails." The room fell silent. Every lens focused on him. This was no longer the shark pit. This was America's biggest political stage. He took a deep breath, recalling the line he once wrote in his notebook. "The right question can be stronger than any answer." And he knew, here, he would need both. The hearing room was so tense you could hear the rustling of paper. The silver-haired congressman repeated sternly, "How do you intend to be accountable if your technology fails and causes chaos?" It was a trap, framed to force him into submission, to admit risk on their terms. The CEO calmly took a sip of water, then raised his head, his voice clear and firm. "Congressman, may I ask in return, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, when millions of Americans lost their homes in the 2008 crisis, who was accountable? Was it not the very safe institutions that created the chaos?" The room stirred. Some lawmakers raised their brows, while reporters hammered at their keyboards furiously. He pressed on, refusing to let the moment slip. "We never promised to eliminate risk. Every market carries risk. But unlike the giants, we are transparent. We give users the tools to see risk clearly and manage it. That is true accountability. Not hiding it, but sharing the truth." A young congresswoman in the middle row nodded, interjecting, "So what you're saying is, your technology helps small investors understand the game instead of being blindfolded?" The CEO smiled. "Exactly. For decades, Wall Street has survived by hoarding knowledge. We're just leveling the playing field. And if that's considered dangerous, then perhaps the real danger is the monopoly of information." The words cut through the tension like a blade. Cameras zoomed in on the silver-haired congressman, speechless for the first time in the hearing. After that answer, the atmosphere in the hearing shifted noticeably. A few lawmakers leaned back, their faces less tense, while reporters whispered, "He just scored big." The young congresswoman spoke again. "I believe if this technology is as transparent as you claim, it could actually help prevent another crisis. We should be encouraging innovation, not strangling it." Her words sent murmurs across the chamber. A few light claps echoed, rare in such a formal hearing. But the opposition wasn't giving up. Harrington Capital's legal representative immediately slammed down a thick binder. "We have evidence showing that this AI system, under extreme market conditions, could generate false signals, leading to devastating losses for small investors. This is dangerous gambling. A large screen lit up, displaying a simulated market crash. Red numbers splattered across the graph, as if to prove the technology could wipe out inexperienced users. The room buzzed again. Some lawmakers frowned, concern etched on their faces. The press was already drafting new headlines: Miracle Tech or Death Trap. The CEO sat still, eyes focused, fingers interlaced. It was clearly a dangerous strike if he failed to counter it properly. All the credibility he had built could collapse instantly. He inhaled deeply, then smiled faintly. He knew. It was time to play the secret card he had prepared all along. All eyes turned to the CEO. The glowing red graphs on the screen still pulsed, a visual accusation that his technology was a financial weapon of mass destruction. The CEO slowly rose and walked to the microphone. His voice was calm but resonant, each word sharp and deliberate. What Harrington Capital just presented is not evidence. It's a simulation designed to instill fear. And here's what they didn't tell you. He gestured, and his engineering team switched slides. On the screen appeared a parallel chart. Real-world data from his AI system during the 3 biggest market swings of the past year. When the market dropped 12% in March, his system not only kept small investors safe, but helped 60% of them limit losses to under 2%. When tech stocks crashed in June, the AI issued early exit alerts, sparing users from the steepest falls. And during the October turmoil, the tool identified fast-recovering stocks, enabling many small accounts to profit, while big funds were still scrambling. He paused, locking eyes with the cameras. This is real data, not a hypothetical doomsday scenario. Transparency means showing the truth, not scaring the public with worst-case fantasies. And the truth is, our technology has protected the vulnerable from the very chaos you call systemic risk. The chamber fell silent. Some lawmakers leaned in to confer, their expressions far more serious now. Reporters typed furiously, aware they were witnessing a pivotal turning point. The CEO smiled faintly, then delivered the line that stunned the room. The question isn't whether this technology is too dangerous for the public. The real question is Wall Street ready for the public to finally be safer? The hearing ended, but its echoes rippled across America. On television, news channels replayed the moment the CEO countered with real-world data dozens of times. Commentators called it the turning point, when a small startup dared to challenge a financial giant in front of Congress. CNN's headline read, "A black CEO forces Wall Street to listen." The New York Times noted, this unexpected transparency could reshape how the public views financial technology. Within days, the CEO's name became familiar across social media. Ordinary citizens, people who never cared about stocks, shared clips of the hearing with excitement. Finally, someone is speaking for us. But fame always casts a shadow. Behind the scenes, Harrington Capital and other Wall Street powers seethed with anger. To them, the hearing wasn't just a loss, it was an insult. An outsider had humiliated them in the halls of Congress. In his office, the CEO sat by the glass window, looking down at the glowing city. His phone buzzed non-stop. Interview requests, partnership offers, even dinner invitations from lawmakers eager to leverage his image. He smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew this wasn't the final victory. It was merely the first step into a far more dangerous game, where money, politics, and power intertwined into an unpredictable maze. He murmured to himself, "We've stepped beyond Wall Street. Now it's time to play on a bigger board." Fame came fast. From being dismissed in the shark pit, the CEO suddenly became a regular face on TV. His image splashed across headlines. People called him the man who silenced Wall Street with a single question. But behind the curtain, the world of power never welcomed outsiders for long. One evening he received a dinner invitation from a seasoned senator. A luxury restaurant, candlelight, fine wine. But after the pleasantries, the senator leaned in and lowered his voice. "You're young with a future ahead. But remember, here, the real rules aren't always written on paper. You'll need a sponsor if you want to last. We can arrange that. It wasn't an offer, it was a velvet threat. Join the political game or be devoured. Meanwhile, back in New York, Harrington Capital launched another shadow campaign. They funded independent studies questioning his technology's safety, then let the press run with it as if it were objective truth. A classic tactic: sow doubt from credible sources. The CEO understood. The enemy now attacked not just with law and markets, but with relationship traps, invitations, deals, handshakes that could turn into chains. In his office, he jotted in his notebook, "Don't get drunk on the spotlight. Fame is an illusion. What I need isn't instant glory, but lasting strength." After the sweet threats and veiled warnings, the CEO realized, to survive, he couldn't stand alone. In a game where Wall Street clasped hands with politics, no single genius could outlast the system. He needed a network. But instead of courting the old guard, he turned to those long treated as outsiders, venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, who preferred breaking rules over obeying them. Nonprofits fighting for financial transparency, which had long demanded open data for small investors, and most importantly, the hundreds of thousands of new users who saw his product as the first, a tool that put them on equal footing with the elites. He hosted an open online conference, not just for investors, but for anyone who wished to join. Over 500,000 tuned in live. He spoke firmly. "We will not let Wall Street and invisible hands dictate the future for everyone. Technology doesn't belong to a few, it belongs to us all." The chat erupted. The hashtag #ChoicePowerToThePeople surged. People began calling him not just a CEO, but the leader of a movement. Meanwhile, one political paper wrote, "What terrifies Wall Street isn't his technology, it's his ability to turn users into a political force." The CEO closed his notebook, writing one more line. "An alliance isn't built on money, it's built on trust. And once trust takes root, it is stronger than any bank." As the hashtag #PowerToThePeople flooded social media, and the press began calling the CEO the leader of a new movement, the atmosphere was very different atop a New York skyscraper. In Harrington Capital's boardroom, powerful figures sat around a long walnut table, no cameras, no reporters, only the cold weight of calculated stares. A gravelly voice broke the silence. "He's crossed the line. This is no longer a startup. This is a wildfire, and if we don't extinguish it now, it will consume the system." Stern CFO added, "We've tried smear campaigns, we've tried seeding doubt, but he only grows stronger. The public believes him. It's time to deploy the kill strategy." Kill strategy, a ruthless term in finance meaning to unleash every weapon possible, legal, political, and market forces, until the target is crushed beyond recovery. A legal advisor slid a thick dossier across the table. "We've prepared a class action lawsuit accusing his company of securities fraud and consumer deception. If the SEC steps in, their accounts could be frozen within 48 hours. The room grew heavier. A silver-haired mogul tapped his fingers lightly on the table before concluding, "Make him an example, so anyone else daring to challenge Wall Street will think twice." Meanwhile, in his modest office, the CEO had no idea a storm of lawsuits and financial warfare was brewing. He only felt the cold draft seeping through the window, as if the wind itself warned him. The real battle was about to begin. The bad news arrived on a gray, rainy morning. The CEO's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from legal advisors, emails from banks, alerts from the press, all hitting like artillery fire. The SEC had officially launched an investigation into his company for misleading investors and securities violations. Within hours, company accounts were temporarily frozen. Some banks halted transactions. Business partners panicked, sending emails. "We need to suspend our contracts until this clears up." The media swooped in like starving vultures. The Wall Street Journal's front page screamed, "Rising star on the brink. AI startup under federal investigation." Inside the modest office, the tension was suffocating. Employees whispered nervously, eyes clouded with fear. A young engineer exclaimed, "We just reached the top. How did we fall this fast?" The CEO sat silently, eyes fixed on the flashing newsfeed. His chest felt heavy as stone, yet his face stayed resolute. He knew this was the kill strike Harrington Capital had been preparing all along. He rose, addressing his team with steady conviction. "They want us to collapse on the first blow. But remember, what makes us special isn't just technology. It's the trust of hundreds of thousands out there. As long as they believe in us, we have not lost." Outside, the rain poured harder, drumming against the glass. The real storm had only just begun. As the media swarmed with headlines, the CEO called an emergency meeting late at night. No coffee, no pastries, just tense faces under harsh fluorescent light. He opened with a firm statement. "We will not hide. We will face this head-on." He laid out a two-pronged strategy. Legal. He hired a top-tier team of lawyers, veterans who had gone toe-to-toe with the SEC in high-profile cases. "We will cooperate, but we will not bow," he said. "Every document, every number is transparent. If they want to scrutinize us, we'll show them, and we'll show the world at the same time." Media. Instead of retreating, he decided to step into the spotlight. He scheduled a live interview on national television, where he would state clearly, "The startup deceived no one. Rather, it is the old system that has been hiding risks from the public. We will not let Harrington Capital write our story," he declared. "We will write it ourselves." The team slowly steadied. A young employee whispered, "If the public is on our side, they can't crush us so easily." The CEO nodded. He knew this battle wouldn't just be fought in court, but in the minds of millions watching. Outside, the storm raged louder, but inside that modest office, a counteroffensive had begun to take shape. That evening, the nation was glued to their screens. A live broadcast aired with the provocative headline, "AI Startup Under Fire, Visionary or Fraud?" On set, the spotlight blazed down. The veteran host, infamous for sharp, cutting questions, sat across from the CEO. The first question struck like a blade. "Did you deceive your investors?" The studio fell silent. Social media buzzed wildly. Millions waited to see if he would stumble or stand tall. The CEO did not flinch. He looked straight into the camera, his voice steady yet commanding. "No, and I'll prove it right here." He held up a dossier, the transparent report already made public, and broke down the numbers in clear, simple terms. No jargon, no evasions. He told stories of his father losing everything to a system that hid risks, of millions of ordinary people forced to play a rigged game where only Wall Street knew the rules. "We don't promise everyone will win every trade," he said, eyes fierce, "but we give them a fair chance for the first time in history." The studio audience began to applaud. The host, caught off guard, lowered his tone. "So you're saying the problem isn't your technology, it's the system itself?" The CEO nodded. "Exactly. If transparency is a crime, then tell me, why has secrecy never been charged?" The words pierced through the screen, striking millions of viewers. On Twitter, the hashtag #FairGame exploded. The conversation shifted, from accusations against him to a national debate on fairness in finance. In that moment, the CEO had transformed a grilling interview into a stage of counterattack, with the entire nation as his audience. The very next morning, every major outlet carried the same theme, but this time it wasn't accusation. CNN. Audience sides with young CEO. Has Wall Street miscalculated? The Guardian. From defendant to icon. A black CEO challenges the global financial system. On Twitter, millions of posts surged under the hashtag #FairGame. The talk was no longer about lawsuits, but about financial fairness, a subject once monopolized by experts. In New York cafes, people whispered, "He's right. Why should transparency be treated as a crime?" Maybe this time the game really has changed, but inside Harrington Capital's office, the air was thick as smoke. A director slammed the table in rage. We threw the SEC at him, and he turned it into a show that worked in his favor. Another advisor frowned, murmuring, "This is the real danger. His technology can be regulated, but a story cannot be regulated." And he just turned himself into a story. Back in his modest office, the CEO read the headlines, heard the applause from the public. But instead of celebrating, he only smiled faintly. He knew one truth: public spotlight was both weapon and trap. He scribbled in his notebook, "Media is an ocean. It can lift a ship or drown it. My job, learn to steer before the next storm arrives." Because he knew Harrington Capital would not stop. If numbers couldn't kill him, they would find another way, and the next strike might be far more vicious. The New York sky was gray that day, dark clouds rolling as if foreshadowing an oncoming storm. But within the heart of the financial district, another storm was quietly gathering, the final storm. At Harrington Capital, every remaining weapon was mobilized. Veteran lawyers were paid millions to craft new lawsuits. Media strategists launched a counter-transparency campaign, framing the startup's openness as a national security risk. A friendly senator even introduced an emergency bill to tighten financial tech regulations. Meanwhile, in his modest office, the CEO prepared his final move. He no longer led just a startup. He led a movement. Messages of support poured in from across America. Thousands pledged to sign petitions defending his technology. He gathered his leadership team, eyes blazing. This isn't a battle between one company and one empire anymore. It's a clash between an old system and a new generation. If we win, it won't just save this startup, it will change the rules of the game. Outside, car horns echoed through the streets, mingling with the pounding rain. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, awaiting a collision everyone knew was inevitable. The CEO smiled faintly, writing one final line in his notebook. The decisive battle, not just for the company, but for the future. On the first day of trial, dozens of reporters crowded the steps of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. Headlines blared across morning. Papers, Battle of the Century, AI Startup versus Wall Street. Harrington Capital unleashed an army of lawyers. Black suits, leather briefcases, cold stares. They entered the courtroom as if victory was already theirs. One muttered venomously as he passed the CEO. "Game over, kid." But as the CEO stepped out of his car, hundreds of ordinary citizens erupted in applause, chanting his name. Many held handmade signs reading, "Fair game, not rigged game." Inside, the courtroom felt heavy as lead. Harrington's lead attorney opened with an assault. This startup is reckless, dangerous, and if not stopped immediately, could destabilize the entire system. Reporters scribbled furiously. The nation watched live. Then came the CEO's turn. He rose, no notes, no script, just blazing eyes and a voice that carried, "Your Honor, if transparency and fairness are considered threats, then perhaps the only thing we truly threaten is the monopoly and privilege of those afraid to lose their power." The words cracked like lightning through the tension. Outside, the crowd roared, their chants echoing into the courtroom itself. This wasn't just a trial. It was a battle of wills, and every eye was fixed on him. By the third day of trial, tensions peaked. Harrington Capital unveiled new evidence, a leaked internal report noting the AI system had a high probability of errors under extreme conditions. Gasps rippled through the press. Some lawmakers watching shook their heads. Headlines blared instantly. Leaked internal docs admit AI tech unreliable? Inside the courtroom, all eyes turned to the CEO, waiting for him to crumble. But he calmly stepped forward. Holding up the document, he spoke slowly. "Yes, this is your report. But what Harrington didn't tell you is this. It was from our early testing phase long before the product was finalized. In science and technology, acknowledging flaws in order to improve is proof of honesty. not guilt. He paused, scanning the room, then continued. We do not hide our past. We learn from it. And if a company can be condemned simply for experimenting, failing, and improving, then tell me, how can innovation ever exist? His words stirred the chamber. Some reporters shifted their tone, from condemnation to questioning Harrington's selective framing. That evening, a renowned data scientist went on air. Early testing reports are not proof of failure. They are proof of serious work. If Harrington uses this as a weapon, it shows desperation. The hashtag #innovation needs failure began trending. Public sentiment swung from suspicion to empathy. The CEO smiled, jotting in his notebook, "Their strongest strike turned into proof of our transparency." Judgment Day, an entire nation held its breath. Outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, thousands gathered, holding signs high. Fair game for all. Inside, the air was dense. The judge, renowned for her toughness, entered. The gavel struck. Silence. Harrington Capital's attorneys held their heads high, certain justice would favor them. But the past weeks had revealed everything, from their smear tactics to the CEO's unflinching transparency. The judge began. After full review of the evidence, the court finds no indication of investor fraud. The accused company provided transparent and truthful data, therefore all charges are dismissed. The courtroom erupted in applause. Outside, cheers thundered like a wave. The hashtag #Chalk Victory for Fairness shot to the top of national trends. The CEO closed his eyes, breathing deeply. No tears, no cheers, just a quiet smile. Because he knew this was not the victory of one man, but the victory of trust. Meanwhile, in Harrington Capital's boardroom, faces fell. Their kill strategy had failed, and now they themselves stood as the symbol of arrogance defeated. That night, in his modest office, the CEO opened the notebook that had followed him through the journey. On the final page, he wrote, "We asked one question, and the world had no choice but to answer.